Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on the show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. The scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about loving on our veterans and understanding them a little bit better. We are talking to author Saundra Russell today about her book, PTSD, Putting the Story Down, how a World War II veteran recovered after treatment from his what used to be called shell shock, and we now refer to that or include it in the PTSD diagnoses. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Saundra. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today.
Good morning, Dr. Angela. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you are here, and I can't wait to talk to you about your book, because there are so many people that are suffering from PTSD, and it does not, in my humble opinion, get enough attention because so many people suffer from PTSD because it's post-traumatic, and so many things can cause a trauma for an individual. So I can't wait to touch on that from the military perspective. Now, before we do that, though, I always like to introduce my guests to perhaps those one or two people out there who are unfamiliar with who you are or your work. So in your own words, what makes Saundra? What makes you, you?
I'm a 50-year nurse, and I love people.
My mom is a nurse, so I can understand that. You do have to have a love of people if you're going to care for them when they are in one of their most vulnerable states. I can definitely understand that. Do you think that your having been a nurse gives you a certain understanding and a certain perspective to have been able to write your book?
Yes, I have family that was in the military, and I cared for many a veteran in the Veterans Hospital, so that gave me impetus. I had one special patient. He was the most memorable veteran, and I wrote a poem about him, and that inspired me to write the book.
You know, I always love how there is a prompting or an inspiration that gets us in the writing mode, where we feel like I just can't hold this information, these feelings to myself. I have to share them, and how people are so happy that you did. Now, the title of the book, PTSD, Putting the Story Down. How did you come about that title?
I came about it because I am a multi-award-winning published poet, and I said there has to be a way for the veterans to get their stories out, outside of talking about it. So I devised a very quick way to write poetry, 3 lines, 7, 8, or 9 syllables each line, to do self-help. Self-help by putting the story down, getting that poison, that traumatic experience, witness or experience, get it out.
I have to agree with you on that. And you know, as a therapist, and I've even mentioned it here on the program a few times, is that how important it is to be able to write and get those thoughts out, be it that they are causing you angst, or there's something that may be pressing on your heart, like you're trying to be creative or imaginative about something, and just to be able to get it out on paper definitely does help. You are so right with that, about that. Now, what kind of book would you say that yours is?
It's a self-help book, primarily directed to veterans to get their story out. It gives instructions on how to do the poems, and it's very, very healing.
And it's so important, I think, for our veterans to have that safe place to be able to discuss how they're feeling, to know that that it is difficult for them, to know that they're not always provided a place to have these discussions because it could affect how other people look at them. It could affect their status while they're actually still in the military. It's such a hard place to be, and I'm so glad that you've created a resource for them that in the privacy of their own home that they're able to go through your book and be able to perhaps find some release, or at least read something that brings them a sense of comfort. I love it. I love it. Now, do you suggest that when reading your book that you read it from cover to cover, or can you simply open it up and start with the page that is opened to?
You can start anywhere that you want, but if you get a little confused, you can go to the front of the book to get the instructions. You may not need the instructions. You just need to think and write down what's on your mind. By counting syllables, it helps you to think. You pause and you think.
I like that, the pause, because that's something that we also teach. It's like pause, stop and really reflect about what's going on. Is this real? Is what's happening actually happening? And I love that you incorporate some of those therapeutic methods into the book, but in a very gentle and kind way. It's not like you're yelling, hey, let's have a therapy session. So I love that you're doing that. That is so beautiful and so helpful. So absolutely helpful. I love it. Now, for many authors, they choose to dedicate their books to someone that they find to have been inspirational to them, or their support team, or someone that they love, or someone that simply helped them write the story from a particular point of view. Did you choose to do a dedication for your book?
Unfortunately, at the time, I did not. However, I keep it in my heart. My mom taught me to write poetry by playing Rhyme and Simon. My grandfather taught me about the lasting trauma about war by his stories. I also have a brother-in-law who told me his story. I have two nephews that graduated West Point, and they were overseas, and some of their stories. So, yes, I should have dedicated, but unfortunately I didn't. But I do dedicate it to all the veterans who helped us, and to the memorable veteran who spearheaded me to writing the poem and therefore the book.
Absolutely. And, I think that it's nice, though there may not be a page in the book that says it's dedicated to them. The fact that you are now on radio, and you're saying this is who I'm writing for, with, to, that's a really big thing. And someone out there is saying thank you because they already have a copy of your book. And they're saying, thank you for all that you have done to help give a voice to what's going on with them. Now, when is the best time to do the work in the workbook? Should they read the questions, read the book first? How does all of that work? What do you instruct them to do?
I would say read the book, so that way you have the instructions and you can start writing. You can jot down a few words now, a few words later, but now is the time to get started, because that way you can get some relief from the anguish and the angst that you have from the trauma.
Now, when you were writing, Saundra, did you find that you needed a quiet place to kind of get your thoughts together to be able to write most proficiently? Or did you mind the hustle and bustle of the day, going past you?
I grew up with mother, father, and 3 sisters. It was a noisy house. I'm used to background noise, so I keep the TV on. I listen to the talk shows, or they listen to my thoughts, because I just need some background noise to get me going.
You are so right about that. And I found that now that my children are now adults, the house is starting to become a little more quiet, and I do leave the TV on, or I do find something on YouTube that just has a little ambient sound just to kind of keep that feeling going. You're so right. Not quite an empty nester yet, me, but I can see how that's a very important stage because the house does become quiet. You get used to all the footsteps. I had a house full of boys, so myself, my kids, my husband, it was like, yikes, there's a whole lot of noise in here. So yeah, I definitely understand that. Now, did you find that there was a particular time of day that worked best for you? Did you have a natural inkling to write first thing in the morning? Was it throughout the day? What worked out best?
I write throughout the day, and sometimes I wake up at night. In the middle of the night, something will come to me, and I'll jot it down. But for the most part, I write during the day, early part of the day.
I always like to ask that question because there's an aspiring author out there who is, trying to figure out what's the best time for them, and just that little bit of inspiration from an author saying, yeah, I write at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're going, yes, that's me too. Thank God, I'm normal. It isn't odd for me to want to get up in the middle of the night and do it. Well, yep, I raised my hand. I am a night owl to a certain degree, and it seems like some of my best and most creative work comes to me after 11 p.m. So I definitely understand that. Well, Saundra, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
The title of the book is PTSD, Putting the Story Down. You can get a copy on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or online, even if you just put in my name, Saundra T. Russell. That's Saundra, T like Teresa, Russell, Russell.
Alrighty, listeners, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchchester. My guest today is Saundra Russell, and we're talking about her book, PTSD, Putting the Story Down. Now, many of you know that our fathers, grandfathers who served in World War II, they used to call it shell shock. We now have updated that diagnosis, and it is now included with PTSD. Now, Saundra, my next question for you is about the activities that you included in the book. Why did you include the activities, and how did you go about selecting which types of activities to include?
I included writing poetry. I devised the short way, 3 lines, 7, 8, 9 syllables each line, and I write poetry all the time, and I find it fun. And hopefully this will be a fun way to get the story down. It needs to come out. You don't have to speak about it. You can write about
it. And I like that. I think sometimes people are afraid to speak, and I literally use that word, that they're afraid to speak about it, to talk about it. But you're right. If they write it down, or some people are even creative using an art form, sculpting or painting, and they're able to get some of those intrusive thoughts out of their head and into a different medium to help them recover. I really do like how you put that. Now, can you do? Because I can just see someone saying, well, I'm not that good. I wasn't that good in English class, or I've never written anything before. I don't know if I can write poetry. Oh, is this still going to work? So for that person who says, do you have to be good at poetry to do this technique?
No, you don't. I didn't like English at all in school. I hated it, and I was not good at it. But poetry I was good with. And poetry does not have to rhyme. There was the winner of America's Got Talent this year that he did not do any rhyming poetry, but he did poetry, and they called it the spoken word. So you do not have to rhyme.
You are so correct about that. And spoken word is so beautiful. You can just hear the passion of the person, be it that it is something positive, be it that it is something that has had a negative effect on them or a profound effect on them. Most definitely, spoken word is beautiful, and you're right. It doesn't have to be rhyming. Even though it can rhyme, it doesn't have to be rhyming. I think that's where people get stuck. They're going, I like this line, but I don't know what rhymes with orange. And then they give up, So thank you for that reminder. For someone who says, I'm not really a self-help type of person. I don't believe in all that mumbo-jumbo kind of stuff, and it's just authors out there writing to make a buck. So my question for you is, how would you say that your self-help book is different than some of the others?
Well, it's, like I said, poetry, and then I give some examples, and I think some of the examples are fun to read. They're short, they're to the point, and they're enjoyable. So my self-help book is a little different because you write down your story, and then you have something to remember yourself by.
Absolutely. I know that that's one of the things that I mention to my clients is that when you're journaling and you get to the end of that journal, to go back and to read over some of your thoughts, not to trigger yourself in any way, but just to see how far you have come, be it that it is 90 days, if you didn't write quite that often, perhaps it's 6 months ago, to see how much of a gain you've made is rewarding, to see that, wow, I did used to think that way. I did used to have that fear, or that did concern me a lot, and now I'm not there anymore. Even if you've only taken 4 baby steps, you're still not where you used to be. So you are so right with that. Now, for someone who is perhaps they are not the person who's suffering from PTSD, but they love someone who is suffering from PTSD. Is this book appropriate for the granddaughter of the veteran? Is it as equally for the wife of that veteran?
It can be, because they suffer a degree of the traumatic stress from the veteran, and they can help the veteran, and they can understand where the veteran is coming from. I do have a PTSD book coming out for the general population early part of next year. So that may be more helpful. And in this day of coronavirus, COVID-19, yes, we all have a degree of PTSD. So it will be in the book.
Absolutely. And we all need to really think about that, and I think that that's why we all feel the way that we feel. No matter if you're feeling a little bit depressed, if you're feeling a little angry, if you're feeling agitated, if you're feeling irritated, if you're feeling a little did I say sad and depressed? It can run the gamut, and it is all because we don't know what's going on with this pandemic situation. And it's not just here in the States. We have international listeners from around the world. It is affecting your countries as well. And you guys are going through the same thing we're going through. And everyone, I think, is just a little bit on edge. And we cannot wait until our world gets back to what we believe to be normal. But I think that we're going to come out of this with a new normal that is a way to calm our nerves, and we would have picked up some good habits along the way. So definitely, I do understand. Well, Saundra Russell, thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us, and for helping us to understand that PTSD not only affects everyone, but it has especially affected our veterans, and how there is hope for them no matter what stage of the game they are in. There's always a resource out there for them to help them be their best self. If I can ask you one more time, please, can you remind everyone what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And how do we stay in contact with you?
The name of the book is PTSD, Putting the Story Down. You can get a copy at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and online. Even if you put in my name, it will come up. And you can stay in contact with me. My email, myku789@gmail.com.
Thank you again, Saundra, for spending time with us here today.
You are so welcome, and thank you for having me.
And listeners, thank you for spending time with us as well. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember, you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me for our Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. You know what I like to do on the show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. Today, we want you to be fired up about this author. Her name is Stephanie Bell, and the title of her book is The Growth of a Girl to the Wisdom of a Woman. Now, ladies, it sounds like this time it's all about us. So let's go on. You know what I'm going to say. Get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark.
Thank you. Good morning.
I'm so excited to talk to you about your book today, but as we do here on the show, we do take some time to introduce you to perhaps the one or two people out there that are unfamiliar with you or your work. So the first question to you is, what makes you you? What has made you the woman that you are today?
Well, I guess it's who I am. I did have a career. It was in real estate. And when one turns 70 and has been a realtor for 30 plus years, continuing education is no longer required. And at the time, my son said, "Gosh, Mom, that's when you should take continuing education." Actually, he was right. But moving along here, when I was in college, I majored in English literature. And I was going to go to Catherine Gibbs in Boston and become a famous secretary in San Francisco, California. I graduated on June 7th and married the priest at All Saints in Beverly Hills on June 14th, 1957. So I did not become the famous secretary. As a person of interest, I do belong to many groups as a volunteer in most instances. I'm a founding member of the Church of the Epiphany in Oak Park, and there I am on the pastoral committee. I'm a Lem and a lector and a Stevens minister. I used to sing in the choir, but now I just go to the 8 o'clock service with my husband. I belong to the Chamber of Commerce, Toastmasters, the Women's Council of Realtors, and Rotary. What is very interesting is that I was an original volunteer at the Reagan Library before it was dedicated. I actually drove up in a Jeep to that site with a friend of mine who knew that that was one of the places it was going to be. And I have been a hospital volunteer in 3 hospitals, one in New York, the other 2 at the Good Samaritan in Los Angeles and St. Joseph's in Burbank. What was especially fun was the 4 days of training to be a Raggedy Ann in the Adventures of Caring program that's in Santa Barbara. And you're dressed as Raggedy Ann and carrying the doll, and I would visit patients in my assigned hospital. It's amazing what a Raggedy Ann doll can do for a patient. So many people do indeed have a memory of having a Raggedy Ann doll. I guess I don't know if there's anything else that would be exciting to know.
But awesome things. Those are amazing things, though. And it's funny how you say, you had a particular plan to do something and it didn't quite turn out the way you thought, but yet, boom, here you are, still having your famous moment, yet another famous moment of being on the radio and being heard around the world, so it's like God's plan is still an awesome plan. So I love it. And all the exciting things that you've been able to do. I love that you're involved in church as someone who was born and raised Presbyterian and being a ruling elder, being on session and helping to run the church is an exciting thing that I do. So when I hear the things that you're doing at church, kudos to you for doing that. People don't understand how important it is for people to be involved to help make sure that church runs smoothly. So I love that. And the Raggedy Ann, I had a Raggedy Ann when I was a little girl. So that would be amazing. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that is a great thing. And it is those small things that people do in the hospitals that really and truly do keep you motivated to get well. So I think that's an awesome thing that you've done there. Now, being an author, is that something that you always wanted to do, or did you find that was just the next thing on your list of to-dos at the time?
Well, actually, related to that question, why do you write? I have found that writing down the obtrusive thoughts frees the mind, and I have always written. And I think that in publishing this book, I had all these poems already written because, as I said, I've always written. But gathering and organizing them for publication in some orderly sequence was the challenge. It was, okay, I wrote this when I was 12. Is this going to be relevant? And as you progress, that's why it's important when and if you get the book to start in the beginning and read it all the way through, because then you see the growth of the girl. to the quote unquote wisdom of a woman. And I believe that that's the proper way to, get it assembled in your own mind. And
right.
as far as
that is a great answer to my next question would have been a little about your book, but my question was more so about being an author in itself. For some people, they wanted to. They've always wanted to be an author. Like as a child, you had hopes, dreams, and aspirations of being an author, but it just didn't work out until you were a woman. Just about being an author, not about writing this particular book. Is that something that you always wanted to do, or were you simply just writing at 12, not with the aspirations of being an author?
Well, it's the latter. I have never aspired to be an author. I think, and I have no schedule for what and where I write. I just jot down what moves me and capture the thoughts on paper. And more times than not, the poem is formed as written.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so, I love asking that question because I would say out of everyone that I've interviewed, about half of the people will say, no, I had no, aspirations of being an author, but I do enjoy, I enjoyed the writing process, but this wasn't something on my to-do list, when I was in college or as a young child. So definitely. That just, I think, gives inspiration. I asked that question because it gives inspiration to that person who thinks, well, I don't know if I should be an author. Is now the appropriate time? And to hear someone say, I never wanted to write until I started to write, can give them a bit of inspiration to continue to go on. So thank you for that answer. Now, the title of your book, The Growth of a Girl to the Wisdom of a Woman, you kind of gave us a bit of an explanation there with just the segue of your poem from one stage to the next stage of your maturity. Now, is this book then appropriate for young ladies as well, for let's say like a 16-year-old girl, or should you be a little more mature and let's say be college age or a young adult?
I think that it would be appropriate because it involves first love in the beginning and moves way through and ends up with the maturity of, there are poems in there that relate to life, to nature, and I think one of my favorites is Did You See the Cross? And it's the last one in the book. Being a founding member, as I said, of Epiphany, I had many occasions to be there. In fact, I was going to go and take a picture of the full moon in the memorial garden with the cross in the background, but I had to do that in the middle of the night, and so I put a heavy warm coat over my nightgown and drove over there and parked and quietly got up on the wall, camera ready, and I heard this whoof, 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 and there was an owl in the fountain who just rose up and sat on top of the cross and ruined my picture. So that picture's in my mind. It's not in the book.
That was in my mind. I love it. And oh my goodness. And most people are a little startled by owls. They're beautiful, beautiful birds. But to see that unexpectedly, it kind of puts a little bit of a startle in you, kind of unsettles you a bit. So, oh my God.
Well, it wasn't in my plan for the evening. I would have loved to have taken a picture of the owl, but not where he was. And the full moon was out. Everything was perfect, but oh well.
Oh well. Yeah, I love your spirit with that. It's like, oh well. Wow, that's crazy. I love it. I love it. Now, when it came to writing your book, I'm sorry, the process of writing your book. So you have written the stories, the poems along the way. You put them together. You've chosen your cover. You've sent it off to the publisher. It is now back, completed, ready to sell to the world. How did you feel holding a copy of your book in your hand?
Oh, it's very exciting, but it wasn't just, I said the poems and then they tweaked not the poems themselves, but where they were going to be and how to, set it up. And in fact, the cover of the book, was interesting. I was given things to choose from for the background of the verbiage of the title, and I chose this silhouette of an older woman, not an old woman, but a mid-aged woman, rather than a child or an old woman, silhouetted against sort of the sky, so you just see the outline. And I chose that because I thought that kind of combine the young and the old, and you have to open the book to find out the rest.
Right, I can understand. I can understand that. Now, I know that you said that you are a retired person, that you were a realtor, and that is an amazing and fun job. I know a few people that are in real estate, and it's like how awesome to help people, live out their dreams, of home ownership. So I love it. Or even in commercial space, for those out there that says, hey, I'm a realtor, I'm in commercial, and it's like, thank you for helping us build our business dreams out there. But what are you doing now? I know that you've written this book, but what do you do to help fulfill your days as a retired person now?
Well, it's funny you should ask. As I told you, I write. I just constantly write when I'm inspired, and of course, here we are, all of us confined. And I have just published a book called Contentment Found in Confinement, Pandemic Poetry and Prose. But this little booklet has pictures. And I haven't figured out how to market it, but it has been published. And I'm really enjoying it myself. I used to give out little segments of it before I decided to publish it, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. So for the times, I think it's the perfect book. Contentment Found in Confinement.
I love it. Well, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, can you please remind everyone what is the title of the book that we were talking about prior to your mention of this one, and where can we pick up a copy of that book?
Yes, indeed. The title of the book is The Growth of a Girl to the Wisdom of a Woman, and the pseudonym is Stephanie Olivia Bell. That is who I am, Stephanie Bell Eagle, but the pseudonym is published under Stephanie Olivia Bell. And I believe you can still get it at Amazon and at Barnes & Noble.
All righty. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. We are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. You know what I want to do. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you. And I think that that's what my guest wants to do as well. Stephanie Bell is her name, and the title of her book, The Growth of a Girl to the Wisdom of a Woman. I know, a really good title, because it is about the growth. It is about us gaining that wisdom and knowledge to be our best selves. And I love it. I love it. Now, Stephanie, the next question I have for you is, you mentioned that you went to college and one of your hopes and dreams was that you were going to move to San Francisco, I believe you said. Now, being someone who lived in California for quite some time, I totally, completely understand that. What did you study in college?
Well, I studied English literature, and I went to Boulder, Colorado, University of Colorado in Boulder. I actually grew up in Santa Barbara and lived in Beverly Hills for a while. And then I had to move to New York when I was married for about 3 years. But when I studied in college, I studied English literature because I was, as you said, I was going to go to Catherine Gibbs in Boston and become a famous secretary in San Francisco. But I graduated on June 7th and married the priest at All Saints in Beverly Hills on June 14th, 1957. So that was the end of that quote-unquote career.
I do understand. And then you entered into the career, one of the careers of being a wife. And let me tell you, that is definitely a career. I don't think that we really know all that entails until we're actually involved. We have a really good idea looking at our moms, but until you experience it, it's like, oh, they didn't tell me about that little footnote, but okay, here we go. So it is an amazing thing. So I think we need to, one of the things that I talk about many times, and especially to our young adults, is that I see, our grandmothers were housewives, but we should not think of them as just housewives, because just using air quotes there, just as housewives, because running a household it takes talent. It takes wisdom, it takes knowledge, it takes know-how. And there are some unsuccessful housewives and some successful housewives as well. So we should definitely reflect upon that is a career into itself, and not to take anything away from that. So I hear you. Now, being a volunteer, you mentioned that there were a few organizations that you were a part of that helped make you the woman that you are today, and that's so important. What did you like most about being a volunteer?
Well, actually, I guess helping and serving other people. When in any of these groups that I was in, like especially the Women's Council of Realtors and in my Rotary and Toastmasters groups, my best and most fun time is to give the invocation. We always start out with a pledge of allegiance and an invocation and a song in all of those groups. And when it's my opportunity to give the invocation, I really do enjoy doing that, because I don't just say, pray for the world and peace to everyone. I do stories that implement that, and that's my fun. I think when I was a volunteer all these years in all the things, hospitals, etc., that helped me prepare for the career in real estate, because you are a volunteer until you close the escrow.
Yeah. I like that. That's true. That's true. I never thought about it like that. That is so true, because that's until they sign on that line, huh? Mm-hmm. I hear you. Now, as far as deciding to actually publish the book, so you have these poems, you've been writing. What finally kind of nudged you to say, this is it. I've written enough. This is what I want to do, and put the book to be published.
Well, that's a very excellent question that I have no excellent answer for, because I just written all these poems, and every now and then I'd share them with somebody, but then and the writing of them was no big deal. I mean, that was the cinch, but the gathering and organizing them for publication in some kind of sequence was the challenge, and that took forever. So when that was done, that was great. And then then you have to start the marketing of it, and I'm not excellent at that. So, and why did I write them in the first place? Well, my purpose was personal. Your purpose in reading them as holding the book in your hand could be that the poem stimulates a remembrance of a time in your life that can be relived. I don't know. I mean, that is up to the reader. It's sort of like when you view a painting by some famous painter, you view the painting. Now, what do you get out of that painting? All the people standing there looking at the painting have a different thing that they think of when they see it. And it may have nothing to do with why the painter painted it. I sort of equate that with my poems.
I love it. Now, for someone out there who is an aspiring author, regardless of their age, but they're thinking, I have something that I want to share with the world. Be it that it's poetry, or they want to write a novel, they want to put a short story together, whatever it is. What would be a bit of advice or wisdom that you could pass on to them to inspire them to let them know, keep walking and working towards your goal?
Yes. Now, writing poetry is different from a book that has a theme, although I guess both of these books have themes. But you have to, my husband, I think, is trying to get together. He had 3 fathers. They all died, and eventually. And his book is going to be My 3 Fathers. But he's now trying to go back and segue this and that, and et cetera. And I mean, it's going to take him forever. Plus, it's very emotional for him to be doing this because it brings him back to, his time in the Navy and coming home and finding that his father had died, and the first father. All of those things, though, he's now compiling and putting together. And I'd say to anybody else trying to do something like that, just keep at it, and if you're writing like I write, constantly have a paper and pen. I mean, you never know when you're going to get an idea. And I have to give speeches on occasion at Toastmasters, and I do the same thing for that. Just keep at it, and you'll find too that your brain, I mean, say you see something that is just terrible and you can't stand it, write it down, and it's out of your head. It's out of your head, and it doesn't impact you and your continuing thinking and positive thinking.
Absolutely. And listeners, you've heard me mention that, especially when we're talking about therapy, that is something that so many of the counselors, something that I suggest, and so do many others, because it frees that space. So it's not something that's just used in therapy, but that is therapeutic for your brain. Ease your mind to get that thought out. And that will make room for more creativity, because you're trying to hold on to that thought so you don't forget it. Write it down. Like, it's a great thing to do. Write it down so that next beautiful thought can pop into your head. I love that. Well, Stephanie Bell, thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us here today. I have enjoyed my time with you. Before I let you go, though, can you please remind everyone, what is the title of your book, and where can we pick up a copy?
Well, thank you for that. The title of the book is The Growth of a Girl to the Wisdom of a Woman, and it can be obtained through Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Thank you again for being on Daily Spark today.
Thank you.
Listeners, thank you for spending time with me as well. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone.